I like to think of that there are no bad people. I really like to think that there are just sort of bad decisions sometimes that people make.
Yeah.
I think you could find something good in everyone if you try.
Welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denise Satova. And today with me is a very special guest. I cannot wait to get to know her better. Her name is Aimee Richter. She's a named partner at Lee, Anup Chung White, Kim Ruger, and Richter. Save the best for last. It is an international law firm and recognized as the fourth largest minority-owned firm in New York State. And Aimee is all over the place. She's very active, amazing. I can't wait to find out where she all packs it in. But she co-chairs the Matrimonial and Family Law Division. She has been regularly recognized by the New York Times, New York Magazine, Crane's New York Business as one of the leading lawyers in New York. But today, I am here with her to get to know her outside of her legal accolades and accomplishments. So, Aimee, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, Denisa. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And thank you
I
for those
am
lovely words.
well deserved. Um, you are very active, and I'm always interested to get to know the person beyond all the accolades. And so, tell me a story, like how and what inspired you to become an attorney.
It's interesting. I've been asked that before, and I start with I didn't know any lawyers. Like, I'm not one of those people who had a family of lawyers or a law firm. I really kind of didn't know. Um, and in college, I just said, oh, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to law school. So it was pretty random. Of course, I like to talk a lot, um, but I wasn't exactly sure what a lawyer did. And believe it or not, 30 years later into this career, I see that it's an ever evolving thing what we do. Sometimes we're counselors, we help clients. Sometimes we go out into the world and we get involved in other things that are not necessarily legal, but they're law adjacent. And so I think it's been a journey for me from the beginning, to the end of, not the end yet, but as I get closer to the end of the career.
We have a long ways to go.
Yes.
If you could go back to being a young Aimee, and I'm talking about young girl, maybe age 10, 12, is there a particular experience, something that stands out for you where you felt like you were on top of the world?
Yeah, I think that I always enjoyed, you know, being around other people. I was a very social kid. And I had friends from all over the place. I had a friend from this place, and that group. I was never really tied to any one place because I like to see how everybody does things. And I think that that's been extremely helpful for me in my career. But it's always been, a really good feeling to me when I meet someone and I connect with them, no matter who it is. And one of the things I always say is you can tell a lot about a person by how they deal with people. Not just their equals. In other words, how I deal with other lawyers is one thing, but how you deal with other people in the world, how you deal with the person who back in the day used to fill up your gas tank, right? Or the person who serves you a meal at a restaurant. It's you know how you deal with people when you're walking on the street. Do you smile? Do you say hi? I think to me that's very telling, and it's been extremely important to me my entire life.
Have you experienced your parents, or how have you experienced your parents interact with the outside world?
Yeah, I think that, I come from like a more traditional family in the sense that my dad went out and went to work. My mom stayed home and raised the kids. And she really didn't have, I would say, uh, a dedicated career. In later years, she went back to work, but um, it was somewhat traditional, and I was sort of not a traditional kid. I was always breaking the rules. I'm not a rule follower, right? Um, and interestingly enough, I'm a matrimonial lawyer. I married a man who is a rule follower. So it's very funny how that plays out, that we're very different in a lot of ways. And, if someone says to me, you can't do this, or you're not supposed to do this, and my first question is, why? Why can't I do it? Or, you know, who said? And I think I was like that as a kid too.
See, now we're getting somewhere. See, there almost is like that correlation between what you do and that sort of that fire in you. Then it's almost like a little bit of an edge. It's and I don't know if that lands with you or not, of wanting to be a little different, want to break out of that mold. Um, because the role that you're playing right now, I mean, you're impacting, as you know, clients' lives. That's probably the most important process they will ever go through in their life, and most impactful, I should say. Um, so that's it's interesting. Do you feel like you're in the right spot doing what you do and kind of where what you were sort of envisioning back then, except you had no idea what you were going to do when you get older?
Yeah, I feel like, um, any job, anybody's job, there's a lot of things. There's paperwork and there's phone calls and there's office politics and hiring and firing. I've been on my own since 2002. So it's a long time that I've been sort of, self-employed, that I haven't worked for someone else. And ultimately, what it comes down to is those moments in the courtroom when you make something happen, when you get your client something that they've been wanting for a very long time. Or, I have a story, like, I'm not a crier. I'm not overly emotional. And I certainly am not someone who would cry in court. But I had this case, and I worked for years to get this woman custody of her child, and it was a long slog with a lot of different states and appellate division. It was just a never-ending, thing. And the day that the judge gave my client temporary legal custody, I literally burst into tears in the courtroom. And for me, anyone who knows me well knows that that's so out of character for me, but that was just, those are the kinds of things that you say, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's basically make it worth your while, making such a huge impact on a family. That's not easy to do. What do you, I mean, outside, how do you know, here's something that I know I can ask you. Like when I ask practitioners, and I've had many of them on a show, how do you deal with the emotional aspect? Like what you're describing, you said this case had dragged out for such a long time. To me, it's almost impossible not to bring it with you, not to bring it home and completely just shut it out. How do you basically deal with that so you don't lose the sense of yourself when you get home?
Yeah, I think I've gotten better at it as the years have gone by. I always say that, like, the first 10 years of practice, you don't know enough to even understand, I think, the dynamic of what's happening, with you and how you internalize. And then I think maybe those next 10 years, as you're, sort of honing in your practice and you're learning to try cases, or, to be a rainmaker, all you do is, at least for me, all I did was work. And it did take a toll. It does take a toll on you when you don't do those other things outside of work that will allow you to sort of decompress and step away from it all. And I don't know. I think COVID, interestingly enough, for me, was the very first time, I think, since I started practicing, where I had a minute,
Wow.
where I wasn't running to an event after work, to a meeting, to a dinner or something. It was the very first time that I stopped, and that was really interesting for me to see all this time that I could have if I took it. And it changed things.
Yeah, what was that like? Was it challenging to have that time?
Yeah, I think at first it might have been challenging, but I learned that a lot of things about my husband that I didn't know, and he learned a lot of things about me. He tells the story now that he listened to me on the phone because we were working from home for a while, and he literally listened to me on the phone, with my clients, you know, and he would say, "I can't believe that you have to go through this, day in and day out." Like he said he had a newfound respect for sort of what I did. I don't know that he understood like the emotional things that I did day to day. That was interesting. I also got very involved at that point in an animal shelter where peripherally I had been involved with it because I absolutely adore animals. It's like my passion outside of this. But they asked me to be on the board of this shelter, and I think that really allowed me to experience some different things that I hadn't experienced before. And I've been very involved with them ever since. So that's really been, lovely for me. Um, and then I think, like you, one of the things that I found, although it's been more recent than 2020, is that I started exercising, and I was never a big exerciser before. But when I was in my 20s, but not in the last bunch of years, and I started doing it almost a year ago, and it really changed the way I feel, like on a daily basis. And so, to me, that's so important. If anyone would ask me if I could go back, I would say I would have done that regularly.
Wow. So just like open up a space, really it slowed things down for you to kind of um do some self-care, because that is an important piece, to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And it sounds like a little bit of a self-discovery. Have you Was there a life is about ups and downs. Um, can you share a particular challenging moment and or loss, or just an experience that you had to grow through?
Yeah, I in 2010, I lost my dad. Um, and he was hit by a car while he was crossing the street in Manhattan. So it was one of those things that, right, you read about in the Post or you hear about someone's friend, someone's mother, someone's cousin, but it's never someone you know. And then it was my dad, and he was killed instantly. And that was a very, very, very difficult time for me because he was young, he was in his 60s, and you just don't expect never to speak to a parent again like that. It's a very big traumatic thing. And I thought, oh, I'm good. I stayed home from work for, I guess, a week, maybe two, I don't know. And then I went back to court, and I walked into the courthouse, and it turned out that was the case that I adjourned like immediately after it happened. For whatever the reason, that was the next case that I had on. And I walked into the courthouse and I started hysterically crying.
Ugh.
And the court officer put her arm around me. She said, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be okay." But I learned you can't grief is not something you can just make go away. Like, you have to work through it. And it took me a while. That took me many, many, many months, to get through that. But sometimes having the work is a good thing because it gives you sort of the ability to not think about it for 5 minutes or 5 hours or whatever it is that you need to do to get through the day at that point. That was very traumatic for me.
No, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting. That grief does not go away. You're right. It just comes and goes, and I've learned from my own personal experience, having lost my son, actually, ironically, the same year as you lost your dad, is that it's important to make space for it. And just like you, it's you sort of pour yourself into work, not in some sort of a maniacal way to escape things, just to you strike me as a productive person who needs to keep moving and creating and taking care of others. Um, so it's yeah, we can grow through it, and yeah, there's not a prescribed time. I always say
You
that. It
know,
just
I'm
yeah.
so I'm sorry to hear that. That's like devastating, I
Thank you.
what you've gone through. And I feel like, the more you talk about it, the better it is in terms of, getting like I still get tears in my eyes, right? So it's a long
Yeah.
time already, but it's like yesterday and it's like a long time ago, But I think that's something that's really important to like people can feel like they can talk about it, a
Yeah.
devastating loss.
Oh my goodness. I mean, he like my son, he is I have a daughter and granddaughter, it was his daughter. And so, we are very close. And this has happened over the course of many years, sort of his decline, dealing with PTSD, having served in the Navy. And so we talked about it. We talked about it, and there are periods of time when you get upset, you miss them, but then you laugh as you remember them. And
Right.
so it's like you said, just make space and talk about it, like not shoving it in. And that's, yeah, I think being vulnerable and just as you do, I'm sure with your clients, you probably lean in and you're not afraid of the conflict. It makes you, I would imagine, a much more
Yeah.
impactful practitioner.
I think yeah, yeah, there's a line though, right? Like if you
Yes.
can't identify, you can't become your client, I one of my pet peeves when I'm in court or I'm dealing with a case is when the lawyer is just so aligned with their client that they can't stop for 1 second to see that maybe there's another side or consider that maybe there's another way, and they're just mimicking what it is that they've been told. I won't do that. I will say to a client, I'm not doing that. And that's, but I understand that I'm lucky because I can do that, right? If a case comes through my door and I don't like what the client is saying, or I'm not interested in doing that kind of litigation, or I feel that it's just not at my comfort level, I have the ability to say sorry, but you're gonna have to find someone else to do that. And I understand not everybody has the luxury. Some people have to take what comes, in through the door because they work for someone else or, whatever the reason
True.
is. So I understand. I like to think of that there are no bad people. I really like to think that there are just sort of bad decisions sometimes that people make. I,
Yeah.
I, I think you could find something good in everyone if you try.
Oh my goodness. You speak my language. That's one of the reasons I really enjoy this podcast because you can't go wrong being authentic and feelings are true feelings. You can make them up. They simply are. And a lot of times I used to say people act from their shadow side and when they're scared. Um, so as you know, right, the anger masks the fear. So you're right. It's bad decisions and the fear of unknown, losing control. So
That's
that's
right.
that's such a great perspective that you maintain, and it's unnecessary. You're right. Many practitioners, they get lost, and it's almost like they take on this conflict. It's like that's not yours. What
Yeah, I
what
had a
is your
mentor. Oh,
yeah?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, no.
I mean,
I'm curious about.
I had a mentor, my first mentor. So my first 10 years, I practiced in a very small law firm in Brooklyn. But it was sort of like a political place. So, I didn't learn how to try a case per se, but I learned how to, like be a human and also be a person who can work with others. Like I kind of learned community there. Again, I didn't come from the law, so this is my very first experience like in the legal community, and I didn't even know what I was supposed to be doing. And I had a very good teacher, and a lot of things that he said to me over the years stick with me. But one of the things that he says, which is something people say all the time, but it really was true, is don't mistake kindness for weakness.
Mm.
Um, and I think that a lot of people do that. If you're being nice, if you're not being confrontational, if you're not, trying to, tear someone down or speak over them or, punch them in the face, whatever it may be, that you're not strong. And that's just not true. In fact, you're much stronger because you don't need to put on a show um, to be smart or to get your point across or to, make something work in favor for your client. You don't have to yell.
No, and I am so with you. As a matter of fact, when I encounter a person like that, I say, you know what? Use your words. And if not, it's I would say I can't hear you. So when you decide, to get back to where I can hear you, and you're absolutely right. It's I think is speaking with just slowing it down, confidence, clarity, and a certain tone. If you're screaming, I mean, it's almost like a reflection of how you feel about yourself on the inside. You just projecting it on the outside. That's my view.
Yeah, and I feel like as I've gotten older and I've gotten more experienced in this, I have less patience for that kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
when whether it's in a courtroom or anywhere, I think people have become so polarized lately, and not political, just whatever it is.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you look on social media, if you write the sky is blue, there's 18 people writing why it's not blue and why you're an idiot for thinking that it's sunny out because it's raining. Like, it's just
Yeah.
it's everyone's first go-to is why is someone wrong? Why not, say, oh, okay, maybe it is, maybe it is, maybe the sky is blue. Maybe I'm not seeing it right. Or okay, you think the sky's blue, I think it's red. We're all good. You know, it's funny I picked those two colors. It really was not political.
See, you
I
stirring
should have
stuff up here. I can see that.
I know I should have used green and yellow. That was like a better analogy.
Who cares? I mean, it's so silly, but you're right. And and I would say, what, if you want to go dump on somebody else's feed, it's just whatever. Um, what so you and your husband, are there any shows or movies that any shows that you binge on?
Oh my God, we just binged like the entire season of Suits because of course I had to watch the lawyers, the well-dressed, well-spoken attorneys in suits. Um,
Love that one.
and we're also watched a show just recently that I thought was fascinating called The Gentleman. Probably no one's
Oh,
ever heard of it. It's like this little show. I think it was on HBO about like an English aristocrat his father died and left him everything, and it turns out that he like lets drug dealers live on his property. It's a Guy Ritchie
uh, okay.
series. And so the humor is so dry and so interesting. It's not really about the story, it's about the way he tells a story. And apparently the man who's the lead, he's an English actor. You won't know any of the actors in this. Uh, got an Emmy.
Really?
So yeah, so check out The Gentleman. I don't know why I love it, but I thought it was really, really well done.
I will definitely check it out. I mean, I was born and raised in Europe, and I actually I watch shows on BritBox, a lot of like a crime shows and even the older ones. So I love that. I'll check it out. Now, Guy Ritchie's he's a little obscure. So I'll have to kind of keep that in mind. But that sounds definitely interesting. And Suits, I think we watched it like 3 times already. And
Oh,
yeah,
can't
that's
stop watching Suits.
no, I mean, you can just pick it up anytime, anywhere. It's one of those, yeah, it's really, really addicting. How would your husband describe you?
He says that I am the smartest person he knows. Isn't that nice?
That's nice.
He's so sweet. He's a sweet, lovely, beautiful human, and I'm lucky to have found him.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we're married 16 years, um, together almost 20, and I was 37 when I met him. So I was deep into it already. I had my career and I had a couple of homes, my regular home. I had a little weekend home. Like I had this life that was really good. And I think I was ready to, let in someone who was really good. And I was lucky that I met him.
That's beautiful. How do you handle any disagreements, which of course are normal course of life?
Yeah, we're like anyone else, any other couple. We fight. We try to talk it out. Sometimes at one point in our marriage, we went to couples therapy to try to work through some issues because we both come from a similar kind of household where people don't really talk about how they feel.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, it was interesting. So like we didn't have the words, so we had to learn to identify what was going on and to figure out a way to talk about it. And let me tell you, once we got through that exercise, everything changed.
Wow.
Yeah, but you have to work on it. Like you can't just be,
Yeah.
people think they're just going to get married and oh, life is going to be great. Now we know, since I'm a divorce lawyer, and after interviewing
Yeah.
probably hundreds of divorce lawyers, that the divorce rate is so high that that can't be true,
Mhm.
right? That it's not just,
Mhm.
oh, let's get married and life's going to be great. There's a lot that you have to, deal with. And it's not easy.
No. Mm-mm. It's not supposed to be easy. And, so from personal experience and also, having been in this field, not an attorney, but in this field for, oh my gosh, 25 years now. Um, it's interesting because I started in the traditional financial planning and that's where I really learned and got feel for the conflict. And it was not about the money, or it was not about, they say sex and money are two reasons why people get divorced. And to me, what I've experienced, it's not the sex or the money, it's the communication about these issues that's lacking. And so when I would get a couple who are thinking about getting married, whether it was, early or later in life, I would set aside all of their financials and I say, all right, let's talk about ahead of time how you will handle disagreements because they are part of life. And how will you talk about, obviously we didn't talk about sex, I was not a sex therapist, but I said just in general,
Right.
how will you talk about, money and just various things, and recognize that you're both very different. You come into the relationship with two separate, perspectives. That's just normal. And so let's start eliminating things that may come in a way, and then learn from my own personal experience. Like if I had met my current husband 20 or something years ago, it would be a disaster. And same thing. You're not ready until you're ready, and until I had done my own work on myself. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, it's funny, I sort of religion gets it right in some ways, although I'm not really a very religious person and I'm Jewish and my husband is Catholic, so we don't, we're not big into either one, but they do like premarital counseling, however they do it. You sit down and you do talk through some of these issues, and like my husband and I got married. We didn't talk through any issues. We're like, yeah, let's get married. I was me, he was him. And, so it's been a learning curve. But I find that the couples who do address those kinds of things before they get married, do much better. And a lot of
Yeah.
it, all of it is communication. Everyone says, oh, the biggest issue in marriages is cheating. This one cheats on that one and that one. And I say it's not, cheating is not what the issue is. The issue came well before the cheating. The issue was,
Yes.
that one spouse or both spouses failure to communicate with each other, to let each other know that they're there for, that they're partners, that they can do it together, and they're not getting something's lacking and they're going out and getting it
Yes.
outside, right? And
Yes.
that's what it is. um
100%. Yep.
yeah, and sometimes by the
Yeah.
time they get to the point where they go to see a marriage counselor, it's too late. Like you have too many years of anger and resentment for anyone to be able to actually move to another place. My advice to younger couples is do it soon. Do it immediately. There's nothing to be ashamed of by going to get help. If you were sick, you'd go to the doctor, and if you needed financial advice, you'd go to a financial planner. And if you need advice on how to navigate through your marriage, go to a professional, and let them
Yeah.
help you.
Oh,
Otherwise, you're in
100%.
my office, right?
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So before you come to see me and you end up in my office, that is a great perspective from someone like you. So on a parting, any parting thoughts, what advice would you give to, and I love to ask that, especially to seasoned attorneys, what advice would you love to give to incoming attorneys? Maybe something that, you had to learn, you had to figure out yourself.
yeah. I think that it's very, very valuable to have a mentor, whoever it is, whether it's an employer, or a friend that does what you do, in the legal world, or someone you meet. in law school, a teacher, a professor, someone, because that, young people need that because they don't know what to do and how to do it. And the other thing that is extremely important, and is I think that you need to get a young student should get involved in bar associations, because bar associations, bar work is where you're going to meet all kinds of people, and in your field and outside of your field, and you're going to learn how to communicate, how to talk about the law. You're going to learn how to go to an event and walk a room and meet people and feel comfortable. You're going to learn how to talk to judges outside of a courtroom, because I think young lawyers, they're very nervous about doing some things like that. And if you meet a judge in a less formal setting, you really can talk to them like they're just people. I- start early, making connections and going to events and meeting people, and your career is just going to follow. It's just going to happen.
That's a great advice, and it's been consistent all across the board. Show up, definitely show up, and it also you continue to expand as a communicator, especially in this digital age. Where we rely on social media, the Zooms, the virtual world. There's nothing like an in-person meeting, and I love what you said about meeting people in a less formal setting. Have a glass of wine with somebody, and some of these events. Even some of the annual events, it's their various activities. And I've learned early on when I was starting sort of my journey to entrepreneurship, the best way to connect the network is by doing. So you find a common activity, and so you can strike a conversation at these events and find out what they're into. And then you can follow up and you guys can, do something together, whether it's a hike or, whatever. So super
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
I
So
think the younger kids, they just don't want to talk to anyone. They want to text, and they want to talk to people. I mean, I've met clients on or associates, business people on airplanes, at the gym, on vacation, on the street corner. I mean, you never know who you're going to meet if you don't talk to people. And that's really, really the best advice you could give to the young people today. I feel old
yeah.
when I say that, but yeah.
I know. No, and you know what? And even just if you were looking at it monetarily, I mean, the difference, between someone who is really, 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 really very successful, and those who are marginally successful is your willingness to be uncomfortable and to work through sort of your limiting beliefs. So getting a mentor, a coach, seeing a therapist. But the main thing is there are no shortcuts. You have to continue to show up. And that's that. And especially in your profession, I think clients who are going through this transition want to know they can lean on you, and when they show up, you're not going to fall apart. So even for that reason alone, as I'm thinking this through with you, is show up, show up to these events. Makes
That's right.
sense.
There's no question that that's, something
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
extremely important now. Always has been, but more so now, I think.
100%. Well, Aimee, it's been such a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for sharing your background, your story, your advice, your experiences. It's truly inspirational. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was wonderful, and I, look forward to seeing you at some event where we can talk more.
100%. It's definitely coming up. Looking forward to it very much. And to our viewers and listeners, to find out more about Aimee and how to get a hold of her, make sure that you check out her bio link below. And of course, follow us on all social media and a YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast. And until next time, stay curious and inspired.